Well, hello again, YouTube. Welcome back to Highwayman Trucking and My Way on the Highway. Sitting here doing my reset over the weekend in Boise, Idaho, and I really wanted to talk about a hot topic right now for those of us in the trucking industry. It affects every single one of us. It doesn't matter whether you are a company driver, an owner-operator, your own authority, own one truck or 100 trucks. It really doesn't matter. And that is the proposed hours of service rule changes that are being talked about by the FMCSA. Now, you will see videos all over the internet, all over YouTube. This is going to happen, that's going to happen, and there's just speculation everywhere, and there has been for months. But I have my own take on things, and I want to share that with you. As always, if you like the video, please subscribe. If you want to be notified of future, ring the bell. I'm going to dive into this here in just a second, and I'll put some links up over here where I've got my information from. Basically, you hear anything and everything out there, and I've watched a ton of videos, as have you probably. I try to go direct to the FMCSA's website and see exactly what they are saying. And for those of you unfamiliar with that, that's fmcsa.dot.gov. That's really the black and white. It's not the speculation, it's the black and white. But we can say, is it? Because, as you know, anytime the federal government gets involved in something, things tend to go not according to plan all the time. This ruling that they are proposing right now, it's just a proposal, it is not a ruling, has 5 elements to it. And this is kind of the first time that we've ever actually heard those 5 topics being officially discussed. Now, go back a couple of months, they've been working on this or speculating about this for several months now. At first it was going to be implemented, in the beginning of June. Then we were looking at a end of June date. Then it was early part of July. Then it was July 31st. These rules are going to be implemented. And now, the 14th or so of August, they finally published their data and they said, this is what we're looking at. So directly from the FMCSA's website, they said that they have published a notice of proposed rulemaking on updates to hours of service rules to increase safety and provide additional flexibility for commercial drivers. The proposed rule on hours of service rule offers 5 key modifications to the existing hours of service rule. And again, I took a little snap picture of this. You can go on the FMCS website and see for yourself if you haven't already. The first one I'm going to talk about doesn't really apply to me personally, and won't to most of you that are over-the-road drivers. It is actually probably the most clear-cut, self-explanatory, and that proposal says the agency proposes a change the short-haul exception available to certain commercial drivers by lengthening the driver's maximum on-duty period from 12 to 14 hours and extending the distance limit within which the driver may operate from 100 air miles to 150 air miles. Aside from bad grammar on the federal government's website here, it's pretty clear-cut, pretty self-explanatory. Basically, local drivers, were able to operate within a 100-mile air radius, or they propose that goes up to 150 air-mile radius. They were able to be on duty for 12 hours of driving. Now it's 14 hours of driving. And I've never personally really had to worry about that. Doesn't affect me. My son would be one of the drivers that falls under this category. Good, bad, hey, I just don't have a take on it. I mean, there's days when we can all drive 15 hours and be fine. There's days when after 3 hours you need a break. These local guys do get hammered though. I mean, they're constantly in these metropolitan areas in traffic, high stress environments. They don't really ever get that open road calmness that we do out over the road. And so that's a lot of stress. 14 hours a day, you better believe these companies are going to take advantage of it, and they're going to push these guys from 12 hours to 14 hours a day, 5 days a week. And, you know, I don't know. I think it's fine. I know that those of you in the short haul exceptions probably want to make more money, so that will probably be a good thing for you if you can handle the hours. So anyhow, that's self-explanatory. That's the first proposal. The second proposal is the agency proposes to modify the adverse driving conditions exception by extending federal government's grammar is really getting to me. Start over. The agency proposes to modify the adverse driving conditions exception by extending by 2 hours the maximum window during which driving is permitted. Again, pretty self-explanatory. That's going to affect all of us out here. Basically, if you're in a hurricane or a blizzard or what have you, they're going to give you an extra 2 hours to get to a safe haven. You know, they didn't really elaborate how often you're going to be able to use that. Is that like a once a week deal where you can use that exemption, or once a month? You know, is it common sense? It's so open to interpretation. I'd like to see the actual law on that and what is written. It's very difficult to judge on this vague proposal exactly what that's going to mean. You know, who determines those conditions? Is it left up to common sense? Is it something that has to be, you know, put out there by the National Weather Service? You know, that does affect us, believe me. But so that one, you really just can't dive into till you see the black and white. And again, these are all just proposals. This is not what the federal government is going to do for a fact. Number 3 on the list, the agency proposes to increase flexibility for the 30-minute break rule by tying the break requirement to 8 hours of drive time without an interruption for at least 30 minutes and allowing the break to be satisfied by a driver using on-duty, not driving status, rather than off-duty. So my take on this is basically, as long as you got 30 minutes out of the truck off-duty, on-duty, whether it is loading, unloading, securing your load, getting fuel, things like that, you're going to be able to satisfy that 30-minute break utilizing on-duty time versus having to specifically stop and park for 30 minutes, get out of your truck or sleeper berth, what have you, which is how it's been now. You know, I don't know anybody that doesn't try to make the most out of those times, whether it's doing paperwork on that 30-minute break or what have you. That one's pretty self-explanatory as well. I think that's probably a good thing because, you know, I could be out of my truck for 2.5 hours loading or unloading, and some of that time I might be sitting there for 2 hours of that just twiddling my thumbs. I mean, I might not be physically working. I might be sitting in the shade somewhere outside of the truck watching them load. I might be, you know, I have a step deck, so I might be sitting underneath that deck area or something like that, and I'm certainly not working that whole time. So that's a good rule, you know, that alleviates that 30-minute break of having to literally stop what I'm doing wherever I may be and take that 30-minute break when I've just spent a couple of hours twiddling my thumbs and I'm rested and raring to go. So that makes sense. That's a common sense rule proposal, and I'm a little surprised the government put common sense in there, but they have. Number 4 on the list, and 4 and 5 here, their interpretation is very lacking. I'm not an idiot. I understand legalese. I grew up. I'm familiar with government reports and things of that nature. And I'll just read it to you and you can make your own decision. Number 4, the agency proposes to modify the sleeper berth exception to allow drivers to split their required 10 hours off duty into 2 periods. One period of at least 7 consecutive hours in the sleeper berth, and the other period of not less than 2 consecutive hours, either off duty or in the sleeper berth. Neither period would count against the driver's 14-hour driving window. So what this tells me, my interpretation of it again, is that I can split my break up, my 10 hours off duty. And basically I could, let's say today I want to take a break of not less than 2 hours. I could take a 2-hour break. And it's going to pause my 14-hour drive clock for that not less than 2 hours. And then I'd have to take a 7-hour break later on when I complete my shift in between. It's not real clear though, because number 5 will throw a curveball into this, and I'm going to read that next and then we'll talk about both of them. Number 5 says the agency proposes to allow one off-duty break of at least 30 minutes, but not more than 3 hours, that would pause a truck driver's 14-hour driving window, provided the driver takes 10 consecutive hours off duty at the end of the work shift. I don't understand how number 4 says not less than 2 hours, number 3 says not more than 3 hours, and number 4 says you can split your break up between 7 hours and 7 hours and 2 hours rather, but number 10 is saying you've got to have that 10 consecutive hours off. So I don't understand that. I've read through this 100 times. Maybe I'm thinking too hard on it. I just don't understand how they worded that, and I don't understand why that couldn't have all been one rule, explained a little more clearly rather than 2 separate rules. I mean, the 5th one, the agency proposes to allow one off-duty break of at least 30 minutes. I get that. You have to take at least 30 minutes off, but no more than 3 hours. That makes sense. So if you want to stop and take a nap anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours, you can pause your driving clock. That makes total sense to me. At the end of my shift, I've got to take a 10-hour break as it is right now. That makes sense. I totally get that one. And I think that's what all of us really wanted here out of this. But the 4th one, it just doesn't, I don't even understand the need for it to be there. And again, there's probably some bureaucrat that thought they were being real slick. If you've read the proposals right off the FMCSA's website, you can tell that the person was lacking in grammar when they wrote this. And anyhow, so that's what the actual proposals are. Now, because they've been talking about this for months and months, it was going to be due this date, it was going to be due that date, then it was going to be implemented this date, and then, oh, well, we want to see what your thoughts and ideas are as the drivers community and people owning companies and so forth. And who knows how long this process is going to take. Just because this proposal came out right now does not mean that it's going to be implemented at any time soon. You know, maybe they'll surprise us, maybe they will, maybe they'll come in and say this is going to be implemented, you know, September 30th or whatever. But as of right now, I have not seen any concrete evidence within the FMCSA as to exactly when this is going to become law, or even if it is. You know, unfortunately with the federal government, anytime they propose these things, they're looking for dialogue and debate. So they're going to put this out there. They're going to see what the response is from those of us, from the major carriers, their lobbyists, etc. And then they're going to talk about it some more, waste a little bit more tax dollars, a little more time, and then they may either, you know, officially publish all 5 things, or one of the 5 things, or 3 of the 5 things, or you know, who knows what they're going to do in the end game. And I don't think anybody does. I don't think we'll actually know until the FMCSA says this is what's happening, this is no longer a proposal, this is law, and it's going to be implemented on this date. Everything else out there that you're hearing is complete and pure speculation. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people were speculating about this across the internet, and in particular on YouTube. And so much of what we heard was just not even the case, not even proposed by the FMCSA. Whether it was wishful thinking, whether it was bad information, gossip. I mean, you can tell one person one thing, and by the time it gets to two people down the road, the story has changed completely. So, my advice, take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Wait for the FMCSA to actually publish the new rules and laws. And then it's, again, everything the government does, it's interpretation. And there's a lot of sticky areas, their interpretation alone can be a cluster and a half. I have a very good friend of mine. He's been a police officer for about 25 years with our city in Arizona. It's the third largest city in the state. And I'd say probably about close to 15 of those years he's been commercial vehicle certified. And, it's just interpretation of the law. I mean, sometimes people want to blame cops, but they're reading this mumbo jumbo the same way that we are. And until case precedence comes out and they're able to determine exactly, what's law and what's not, just because it's written, it still leaves vast interpretation oftentimes. And you would think for one of the biggest industries in the world, and certainly in the United States, Canada, Mexico, that the FMCSA would come in and say, look, this is clear-cut, layman's terms. This is how this is supposed to be interpreted. This is what it means. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. As we all know in the trucking world, that's never the case. So my little take, I want to actually put it out there. Go on over to the FMCSA's website. That's fmcsa.dot.gov. Check it out for yourself. You can also find a lot of other useful information there on virtually anything and everything law-wise that has to do with transportation, and they'll keep you abreast. It's not rumor city. It's not what we always want to hear all the time, but we're all just kind of crossing our fingers right now, and we'll see where this goes. Again, it is not law. It is a proposed rule change, and we don't know yet how long it's going to take and what exactly is going to be implemented. So anyhow, hope that kind of spoke a little truth to you. If you like, please subscribe. If you want to be notified of future, ring the bell. Stay abreast of your business and your job. There's a lot of great information out there. Freight Waves, I follow on Facebook. I really like their website. They do a lot of information pertaining to the trucking industry and transportation in general across the country. Different trends, what markets affect us and what don't. There's a lot of stuff happening out there right now, and that's been a good source of information for me. And if not, it'll spark my interest enough that I'll Google search something else and go here or there to try and figure out what I want to know. But anyhow, you guys have a blessed day. Thanks for watching. Highwayman Trucking, my way on the highway. See you soon.